We gather tonight not in search of shadows, for shadows are the gentle relief granted by merciful obscurity. We gather, rather, to scrutinize the terrifying absence of shadows, the blinding, merciless clarity that annihilates illusion and paralyzes the soul. Tell me, dear spectator, if you have ever, with a desperation bordering on sacrilege, to truly see the mechanism of the world, to tear the gossamer veil woven by comfort and convention, and gaze upon the stark, skeletal architecture beneath. If you have, then you possess within you the initial spark of a beautiful, terrifying malady. We are taught from the cradle to seek the light of knowledge, the light of understanding. Yet, I put forth a chilling premise, that the most profound and irrevocable tragedy known to the human spirit is not ignorance, but sight. The unbearable, annihilating clarity of seeing the naked truth. The common man walks through life armored by deliberate ignorance, cushioned by the soft, comforting contours of necessary, the lie of enduring affection, the lie of inherent justice, the lie of ultimate meaning. These illusions are the vital narcotic that permits societal function. But what of the few, the desolate few, whose perceptive faculties are tuned to a frequency so high that the background noise of life dissolves, leaving only the piercing, static shriek of reality? These are the damned prophets, the unnerving geniuses, the sensitive souls whom society often labels mad. Their tragedy is not that they failed to find meaning, but that they found the terrible, vacuum-sealed absence of it. Consider the eye of the truly awakened. It becomes an instrument of meticulous dissection, not of appreciation. Where others see a sunset splendor, the seer sees only the relentless, cold geometry of light refraction through particulate matter and the inevitable decay of all celestial bodies. Where others hear the sincerity of a lover's vow, the seer hears the faint, undeniable echo of self-interest and biological imperative that underlines every exchange. This hyper-awareness is not intelligence. It is a structural flaw in the soul's defense system. To see the naked truth is to recognize the miasma that clings to every noble endeavor. It is to know, intrinsically, that the grandest cathedral is merely an elegant cage built upon skull. That every philosophical system is a labyrinth, designed only to distract us from the exit, which is nothingness. This acute recognition isolates the individual within a profound and unbreachable solitude. They can no longer partake in the collective delusion, and therefore, they can no longer truly connect. They exist perpetually on the periphery, watching the joyful, blind dance of humanity with the detached, analytical gaze of a morgue pathologist, observing a vibrant fate through a window pane. Over the coming moments, as the digital clock ticks away into the abyssal well of time, we shall descend into this particular horror. We will explore the three principal axes of this tragedy. First, the intellectual paralysis that results when certainty yields only to absolute, meaningless contingency. Second, the emotional ruin caused by the erosion of sentiment. And third, the ultimate aesthetic horror of confronting the universe as an entity, utterly devoid of human significance. Prepare yourself, if you dare, to understand why the veil exists, and why its tearing is the definitive catastrophe of the soul. For the ascent into blinding knowledge is merely the prelude to the inevitable, chilling descent into the maelstrom of absolute realization. The chilling truth, once perceived, functions not as a liberation, but as a gravitational anchor, dragging the unfortunate soul down into an abyss of intellectual paralysis. The maelstrom of which I spoke. It is here, in the perpetual twilight of perfect clarity, that we encounter the first and most devastating aspect of the seer's tragedy. The destruction of purpose derived from contingent belief. The mind, when exquisitely honed, seeks causality, sequence, and ultimate meaning. But the naked truth reveals a universe characterized by glorious, terrifying contingency. We crave narrative arcs. The universe offers only statistical fluctuations. We demand justice. We are given entropy. The seer, having stripped away the layers of theological and philosophical varnish, stands shivering before a reality that is fundamentally indifferent, a boundless machine of impeccable precision, yet one operated without a discernible operator, and certainly without regard for the delicate sensibilities of its biological passengers. This realization breeds a peculiar, highly refined form of melancholia, far superior to the common sadness born of disappointment. It is the melancholy of the mathematically proven ultimate futility. Every ambitious project, every fervent hope, every promise of legacy is instantaneously reduced to a transient disturbance in the grand, cold equilibrium of cosmic dust. Why exert the will? Why strive for excellence when excellence itself is merely a temporary reprieve from oblivion? The seer is afflicted with a perpetual nolai mi tangiri, towards engagement with the world. They see the strings, and therefore cannot dance. Their every action is compromised by the crushing weight of its ultimate insignificance. Consider, for a moment, the architectural beauty of a perfectly executed hoax. If the hoax is so flawlessly constructed that its artifice is undetectable, the joy derived from it is, for all intents and purposes, real. The unseeing majority lives within this perfect hoax, drawing genuine comfort from fabricated structures. The tragedy of the seer is that they alone possess the forensic tools necessary to dismantle the flawless facade. Brick by agonizing brick, they see the crude timber beneath the gilt, the wires behind the celestial projection, and in that moment, the entire theater collapses into rubble around their isolated form. The profound loss is not the loss of the beautiful sight, but the loss of the capacity to believe in the sight, even momentarily. This descent is marked by a pervasive sense of vocabulary shifts. Language itself becomes a frustratingly inadequate instrument, incapable of transmitting the crystalline horror witnessed. How can one speak of love when one simultaneously recognizes it as a volatile cocktail of neurochemicals designed to perpetuate genetic material? How can one speak of courage when the ultimate consequence of all action is predetermined silence? The common lexicon, saturated with comforting fictions, becomes useless. The seer, trapped behind the glass of absolute clarity, communicates only in fragments of analytic despair, which are universally dismissed by the comfortable, unseeing masseuse as morbidity or delirium. The intellectual burden thus manifests as a psychological stasis. The seer possesses the ability to analyze consequences far beyond the horizon visible to the average mind. They predict the failure of every venture, the hollowness of every victory, the cyclical nature of all apparent progress. This prescience, far from being a gift, is a curse, crippling the will to initiate. Action requires a certain glorious blindness, willingness to suspend disbelief in one's own efficacy. The seer cannot afford this luxury. They are perpetually burdened by the knowledge of the predetermined closure of every path they might choose to tread. Their existence becomes a meticulously documented ledger of inevitabilities, observed from a safe, yet soul-crushing, distance. It is in this maelstrom of hyperanalysis that the heart begins its long, slow atrophy. The transition from intellectual paralysis to emotional ruin is subtle, yet devastatingly efficient, like the quiet, persistent drip of water eroding the strongest marble. The hyperanalytic gaze, once applied externally to the universe's indifferent structure, inevitably turns inward, dissecting the very source of human warmth, the heart. And it is within the chambers of the heart, the telltale heart of the seer, that the deepest tragedy unfolds. The seer's curse is the inability to maintain the essential self-perception required for genuine sentiment. Love, friendship, patriotism. These are not merely feelings. They are highly complex, fragile agreements entered into willingly by two or more parties to collectively ignore certain inconvenient truths. The moment the seer recognizes the conditional clauses, the hidden agendas, the underlying needs and vulnerabilities that fuel these connections, the agreements dissolve into cynical calculations. Take, for instance, the agonizing realization concerning sympathy. The unseeing mind believes that kindness is driven by pure altruism. The seer understands that often, compassion is merely a sophisticated mechanism for managing one's own existential fear, a preemptive soothing of one's future self. Once this mechanism is exposed, the seer cannot experience or accept true, unalloyed comfort. When offered solace, they dissect the giver's motive, finding not empathy, but the reflection of the giver's own dread, dressed in the convenient guise of care. To accept comfort under these circumstances is to participate in a calculated transaction, not a communion of spirits. This relentless scrutiny ensures that all emotional experiences become tainted, filtered through a membrane of unbearable clarity. Joy is identified immediately as a spike in dopamine, fleeting and structurally dependent on external stimuli. Grief is a temporary, neurochemical imbalance, a systemic shock that will inevitably subside, not because of growth or healing, but because the body possesses efficient homeostatic mechanisms. By reducing all noble sentiments to their chemical and evolutionary constituents, the seer systematically sterilizes the landscape of their own internal world. They become emotionally aseptic, clean, and terrifyingly cold. Yet, this clarity does not confer invulnerability. The tragedy is amplified by the lingering memory of how it felt to be blind. They remember the deep, satisfying resonance of unexamined affection, and the memory burns like acid. The seer is a connoisseur of lost sensation, capable of describing with clinical precision the flavors of joy and hope they can no longer taste. They yearn for the narcotic of delusion, but their own mind, acting as a tyrannical sentinel, prevents them from relapsing into comforting ignorance. The door to simple happiness is locked, and the key is in sight. It is precisely at this juncture, caught between the yearning for delusion and the inability to escape clarity, that I must pause, lest the sheer weight of this darkness crush the spirit entirely. If these shadows resonate, if you find yourself nodding in recognition of this peculiar intellectual imprisonment, perhaps you, too, walk a path illuminated by an unforgiving light. If the chill of this realization holds you captive, much like a morbid obsession holds sway over the fragile mind, then you are truly immersed in this inquiry. Pause your descent momentarily and affix your mark of passage. Follow, or register your presence with the gesture of approval, so that others who dwell on the periphery may also find their way into this necessary darkness. We must now prepare to move beyond the internal erosion and look outward, for the seer, having destroyed their internal framework of feeling, must confront the horrific external consequence, the absolute aesthetic terror of a universe that offers no refuge and no discernible beauty, save that which is transient and purely accidental. The path ahead requires a stronger constitution, for we approach the heart of the great enigma itself. Having navigated the internal collapse, the mind rendered inert by certainty, the heart frozen by dissection, the seer is now fully prepared to confront the great enigma. The universe stripped bare of its aesthetic trappings, revealed as an entity both stupendous and profoundly meaningless. This is where clarity transforms from psychological burden into existential horror. For the unseeing, the natural world offers solace. The sublime terror of a storm, the intricate perfection of a flower, the vast, silent expanse of the night sky, these elements are interpreted through a lens of human significance, suggesting a grand design, a divine hand, or at least a comprehensible narrative. But the seer possesses the chilling knowledge that these spectacles, however magnificent, are merely the consequence of blind, relentless forces gravitae, electromagnetism, and the chaotic expansion of energy. There is no message in the stars. There is only burning gas millions of light years away, indifferent to our contemplation. The tragic paradox of the seer is that their superior intellect, which once promised mastery, now guarantees their complete subjugation to this indifferent mechanism. They are forced to live in a world that is geometrically perfect and morally vacuous. The beauty they perceive is transient, accidental, and utterly contingent upon the momentary arrangement of subatomic particles, a pattern that will inevitably collapse back into disorder. The seer experiences the universe as a magnificent, impossibly complex clockwork mechanism, running flawlessly, but lacking the dial that would indicate why it is running, or to what end. This realization challenges the very foundation of human vanity, the need for special status. The seer understands, with brutal precision, that humanity is merely a momentary froth of specialized consciousness clinging precariously to a minor celestial body, utterly dispensable to the cosmic architecture. We are not the audience for this grand play. We are a brief, fleeting biological footnote in an infinitely long, silent tome. This knowledge does not inspire humility. It inspires a suffocating sense of cosmic abandonment. Furthermore, the naked truth strips away the illusion of historical progress. The common man finds comfort in the slow, forward march of civilization, believing that mistakes are learned and evolution is linear. The seer, however, perceives history as a repeating loop, a gruesome, cyclical drama where the costumes and tools change, but the fundamental motivations, greed, fear, desire for dominance, remain eternally fixed. They observe every generation committing the same spectacular, predictable errors, rendered perhaps more efficient by technology, but never truly transcended. This lack of genuine novelty breeds a profound boredom, a jaded weariness with the human project itself. The enigma, therefore, is not a riddle to be solved, but a terrifying fact to be endured, that we are surrounded by splendor that offers no comfort, and immersed in complexity that yields no meaning. The world becomes a vast, beautifully furnished prison cell, wherein the seer is the only inmate capable of appreciating the exquisite craftsmanship of the lock, while simultaneously understanding that the key was never forged. They are defined by this singular, tormenting solitude of mind capable of grasping affinity, yet condemned to find it utterly devoid of human warmth. This tensioned genius for analysis pitted against the despair of conclusion must now reach its peak. We are approaching the apex of this intellectual journey, where the synthesis of internal and external horror yields the ultimate cry of the culmination of this tragic clarity arrives in the climax of The Raven, the point where all intellectual analysis and emotional devastation coalesce into a single, piercing realization that admits no resolution. This is the ultimate confrontation. The mind, having successfully dissected the universe, must now face the fact that the tools of dissection have destroyed the patient, which is itself. The seer's tragedy reaches its crescendo, not in an external catastrophic event, but in the sterile, horrifying silence of complete understanding. The great fear that underpins all human endeavor, the fear of chaos, of randomness, of utter contingencies confirmed. And yet, this confirmation offers no relief, only the cold, hard cessation of hope. They sought truth, believing truth to be luminous and empowering. They found that truth is merely an empty room, immaculately clean, with no furniture and no exits. This high point is marked by the acceptance of a profound, dual loneliness. First, the intellectual loneliness. The seer knows things that others cannot bear to know, and this knowledge erects an impenetrable barrier between them and humanity. They become a living anachronism, a ghost walking among the corporeal. Every conversation feels like listening to a children's rhyme, innocent but profoundly inadequate. Second, the cosmic loneliness, the definitive, absolute separation from any form of transcendent meaning. The seer realizes they are utterly alone, not just on earth, but in the entire span of creation. There is no celestial watcher, no sympathetic ear in the void. There is only the reverberating echo of their own analytical voice. The language at this critical juncture must reflect this synthesis of terror and despair. It is not the language of complaint, but of detached, surgical assessment. The seer has surpassed they operate in the realm of preemptive nihilism. They do not reject meaning. They merely confirm its absence, meticulously, mathematically. This precision is what constitutes the macabre beauty of their fate. They are the ultimate martyrs of logic, having sacrificed their capacity for happiness upon the altar of intellectual rigor. Consider the ultimate price paid: the death of the will to live as defined by human striving, the drive for permanenza, building of empires, the creation of art, the pursuit of scientific immortalities, the vital engine of human action. The seer knows these monuments are sand, and their memory is a whisper soon dissipated by the winds of time. They see the skull beneath the skin of every ambition. When the foundational lie of permanence is exposed, the subsequent desire is not to rebuild, but merely to wait for the predictable conclusion. This is the moment when the seer, having witnessed and catalogued the inevitable collapse of all things, finds that the only remaining, undeniable reality is the self-contained agony of their own perception. Their tragedy is complete. They have achieved perfect vision, and in doing so, have irrevocably blinded themselves to the possibility of joy. The truth they sought was not a key, but a lock forged around their own spirit, the relentless tapping at the chamber door. The sound of the inevitable and final realization is no longer the corvo demanding admittance, but the heart of the seer finally confessing its terminal awareness. Nevermore the comfort of illusion, nevermore the warmth of shared purpose, nevermore the blissful ignorance that fuels life. The shadows deepen now, not because the light is fading, but because the light that remains is too harsh, too focused. We must now gather the remnants of this confrontation and assign the final, chilling moral to the tale of those who dared to see the naked truth. The journey is almost complete, and the final shadows are lengthening across the stark landscape of realization. We arrive now at the message final and the legacy, the philosophical summation of the fate of those who see the naked truth. What does the fate of the seer teach us? It serves not as a cautionary tale against knowledge, but against the hubris of unmitigated insight. We sought to understand the mechanisms of existence, but failed to calculate the necessary function of delusion in maintaining the equilibrium of the human soul. The seer's legacy is the profound, undeniable proof that happiness is not dependent upon truth, but upon the capacity for well-managed, consensual fiction. They are the living testament to the fact that the universe did not design us for clarity. It designed us for survival, and survival often necessitates blindness. The true genius lies not in seeing the absolute truth, but in the sophisticated art of selective filtering. The tragic genius of the seer is their absolute failure at this filtering. They possess an intellect of devastating efficiency, yet lack the merciful inhibition required to function in a world built on compromise and faith. This leads us to the final, chilling question that the seer leaves ringing in the cosmic silence. If the greatest happiness is predicated upon the greatest ignorance, where does that leave the ethical mandate of intellectual pursuit? Are we morally obligated to shield ourselves and others from the final, sterile answer? The seer, in their agony, argues yes, they are the lighthouse that warns of the treacherous, unforgiving shore of realization. Their suffering is the price paid for the comforting darkness enjoyed by the majority. The enduring lesson, therefore, is one of solemn resignation. The veil exists for a reason, woven from necessary illusion and comforting narrative. To tear it is to invite the fatal consequences of light unsuited for human eyes. The seer, having sacrificed everything for the vista of the absolute, stands forever paralyzed at the precipice, a monument to the chilling non-correlation between knowledge and peace. As the curtain descends upon this morbid contemplation, and you, the persistent spectator, prepare to re-enter the realm of soft, manageable deceptions, I implore you, do not merely dismiss these thoughts as the rambling of a melancholy spirit. Allow the chill of this realization to linger as subtle tremor beneath the foundation of your certainties. Use this knowledge not to destroy your own comforting delusions, but to appreciate the intricate artistry of their construction. If this descent into the mechanics of spiritual ruin has left an indelible mark upon your spirit, if you find yourself questioning the very solidity of the ground beneath your feet, then you have found value in this inquiry. Do not let the darkness we have stirred disperse immediately. Engage with this profound subject. Leave your thoughts, your anxieties, and your own glimpses of the terrifying clarity below, so that this communion of shadows may continue to deepen. The tragedy of those who see the naked truth is simply this: they gained the world's most agonizing secret, and in exchange, surrendered their place within the world. And remember, dear viewer, as you return to the comfort of your light-filled rooms, the greatest horror is not the unknown, but the known that confirms the absolute, unwavering indifference of the abyss. Sleep well, if clarity permits.